Hey, I want to do a real quick one, hopefully, of things gun owners should stop doing. And this one is a big one for me. Stop referring to driving as a privilege. Driving is not a privilege, driving is a right. The roads outside, the highways, the freeways, those are all right of ways. You have the right to travel in them. That's a long established human right. That's why they're called right of ways. I know we don't typically use that term anymore, but it is an old common law term. Back when some of the politicians recognized the human right to keep and bear arms, including things like warships with cannons. Not controversial at all. And here's the problem when you say driving is a privilege. It's probably because you're thinking, well, cars are pretty dangerous. It's not like riding a horse. Horses are dangerous, but they're not nearly as dangerous as cars. Well, let me pick some different words to put in that. Well, muskets are dangerous, but they're not nearly as dangerous as the AR 15. Yeah, all these years that you've been making this argument that driving is a privilege, you've been making the same argument that Moms Demand Action makes when it says, oh, well, you can have a musket because the Second Amendment. And that is how they talk. They do talk like that. I've listened to a lot of them, and they all. They're not. I, I shouldn't be insulting them so much, but they're trying to violate my human rights, so I think I have some ground there. Um, so what it amounts to when you say driving is a privilege, you've given away one of the oldest human rights. I mean, this is one that was recognized even before they started saying, "Oh hell, yeah, the common man can carry weapons." You know that the restriction on weapons was medieval. Okay, that's I mean, it goes past that too. But if you were a peasant, there were certain weapons you couldn't carry. So when you run into one of these people that wants to create this class system for carrying weapons, you tell them, well, that's pretty medieval of you. That'll freak them out because they think that's always an insult. Anyway, um, don't cede ground to these people by calling something a privilege simply because the current means of executing it are more dangerous. That way lies gun control. Driving is a right. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, I know we have a bunch of licensing schemes out there. I don't care. Just like I don't care that there are licensing schemes out there for silencers, suppressors, for short-barreled rifles. Do you give a shit about that? Is that like, oh well, owning a short-barreled rifle is a privilege? There's a license system out there. Who gives a shit? Okay, so the government turns rights into privileges all the time. We know that. And we probably mostly go along with it to kind of, keep the peace and to not be made dead by psychopaths like David Chipman. Um, but that doesn't make it right. Just because there's a highly successful auto theft ring in your local area, you don't suddenly start to refer to them as the rightful owners of those cars, do you? So the government is very successful at turning your rights, my rights, everyone else's rights into privileges legally. Not really. I'm not going to acquiesce to that. I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, well, I guess it's a privilege now because the government's been so successful at it for so long. Yeah, bullshit. So you're a successful criminal. That's it to me. And that's how it should be to you if you're going to really actually hold your ground on gun rights. You're going to have to be more consistent. And yeah, I feel comfortable saying you because damn near every gun owner out there will at some point say, well, driving is a privilege because some gun control advocate is going to bring up, well, they have licenses for cars and think that's a slam dunk. Yeah, great. They have marriage licenses too. Is marriage a right or a privilege? Pick one. I think it's a right. So the idea that you have to get permission from, as I've said before, the worst people on the entire planet is aberrant to me as someone who believes in liberty. Do you believe in liberty? If you do, really attenuate your use of the word privilege. I mean, down to pretty much nothing. Privilege is when you invite me into your home, I have the privilege of going into your home. You've granted me that, and you can revoke it at any time. That's how that is. That means that you're acquiescing anytime you use government issued privileges. You're saying that that is their property. You're saying that that is the state owns this, not just management rights, not just stewardship rights, which is the rights they have over all this property. They're supposed to just manage it. They're not supposed to control our access to it. If we're wantonly destroying it, they should stop. They should stop us from it. You know, if you're driving over the roads with some kind of tank that has jackhammers for treads, busting holes in the ground, which is really a cool idea. Yes, then they should stop you. Hey, bud, you're wrecking the road, jackass. We can stop you from doing that. If you're going 100 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood, yes, I have no problem with the cops saying, "Hey, hold up, this is way out of the norm." But if let's go real extreme here. If you're an 8-year-old driving perfectly, yeah, I'm gonna say screw it. He's driving perfectly. What am I worried about? And that probably sounds really extreme to you. But guess what sounds extreme to a lot of the people on this planet? That you own a scary black rifle. So embrace extremism because that is the only way to be free.